I've never experienced loss because I've never had a loved one to lose.
So what do you think? Should I fight this or run with it?
I love you in every universe.
And she also says that stealing is very, very bad.
And I am not some story-eyed waif here to succumb to your pelvic sorcery.
That's how you punch.
She's been looking forward to this.
No kidding.
It was my duty to fight for what I love. I should have...
Everybody thinks that superheroes are so tough, but they're just a bunch of romantic softies at heart. Once upon a time, a wizard and a king fell in love. I am not talking about BBC's Merlin, but instead Billy Kaplan and Teddy Altman, or Wiccan and Hulkling. They are one of the sweetest couples being printed today, and many hope they will be making their big screen debut soon if Billy's intro in WandaVision as Wanda and Vision's son is anything to go by. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for the boys. One time, an interdimensional parasite called Mother attacked with Loki. While Mother was mothering, Loki put it in the young couple's head that Billy used his reality warping powers to make Teddy like him. Obviously that isn't the case, and the pair just realized that even if Loki was lying or that's how it actually started, they're both head over heels now, so who cares? Their love ends up literally saving the day. Hulkling is of royal descent. He is son of male Captain Marvel and the Princess of the Skrulls. Eventually, he becomes king of the Kree and Skrull nations, uniting them together. Wiccan and Hulkling got hitched in 2020 in Empire #4, and that now makes Wiccan royalty as well. Good for them. I personally have been shipping this next couple since I was 5 years old because I saw them together in Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, and they were everything to me. I'm talking about Batgirl and Robin, later Nightwing. They are two of the founding members of the Bat family, both starting out as sidekicks to the Big Bat before becoming their own independent heroes. This is when Robin switched his name to Nightwing. The pair started out as friends and then fell in love later. That's a great foundation. Barbara was Grayson's first love, adorable. Even though they have gone their separate ways a few times and gotten romantically involved with other people, they always come back to each other. When you survive Gotham together, you stay together. Marvel's first ever couple, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, just had to be here. While their relationship has had its up and downs, the couple seems to always work it out in the end and has maintained one of the longest marriages in MCU history. One particularly sweet moment was in the Fantastic Four Volume 4, Issue 4, when Mr. Fantastic traveled back in time to paint cave paintings for the Invisible Woman as a monument to her. It's a picture of the whole squad, but she has a big heart around her head. The team discovered it while on a mission. Their wedding was the comic book event of the century, with heroes like the X-Men, Doctor Strange, and the Avengers all in attendance. Even Stan Lee tried to get in. Another pretty iconic MCU wedding wasn't even planned, kind of. One X-Men couple backed out of their ceremony, but everyone was already there and weddings are super expensive, so fan favorite couple Gambit and Rogue stepped up and tied the knot. Even though the tying was unplanned, their improvised vows were absolutely adorable. Gambit saying he loves Rogue with every piece of him and he will try to always be worthy of her love and respect. Rogue vows that no matter what, she'll always find her way back to him. At the end of the issue, their couple series is announced, Mr. and Mrs. X. They have been dating for a long time, but it hasn't always been perfect. Rogue's mutant ability is that she can't touch someone without absorbing their life force and powers. It causes problems. Gambit has stayed by her side through it all, and when Rogue takes a break from the X-Men to figure herself out, he's right there waiting for her when she gets back. Eventually, she does learn to control her powers. Gambit has also caused many a problem for her. At one point, he decided to become a horseman for Apocalypse, Death specifically. In the battle with the X-Men, he is unable to kill her because even though he's a totally different person, his love for her was so great it broke through his mental fog and stopped him. They also have 3 cats together. That's the ultimate commitment. Wanda and Vision are an unlikely duo. Wanda, a mutant with a powerful set of magic skills, and Vision, an android with the capacity of feeling as a human does. Yet somehow, these two fit together perfectly. In the films, Vision helped Wanda work through her trauma. Age of Ultron was not kind to her. They escaped together for a bit to try and live as normally as possible until they were found so they could fight in Infinity War, and I I think we all know what happened there. In the comics, they are fine-ish and had a pretty iconic moment that eventually was put into the TV show WandaVision. The pair wanted kids, but Vision is a robot, so that wasn't happening anytime soon, unless of course one of them happened to be one of the most powerful magic wielders in the MCU. Short form, Wanda used magic to create the babies, Wiccan and Speed, or Billy and Tommy, but they never got to raise them. In the show, it was because they weren't real, but in the comics, it was because there was a magic mix-up and the twins ended up getting adopted by human families. In WandaVision, we learned that Vision had plans for the future, buying land for their first house, leaving the deed to Wanda with a heart reading to grow old in. They deserved better. Pepper Potts and Tony Stark make such a perfect pair in the films. It's hard to imagine she ended up with Happy Hogan in the comics. The comics Iron Man did realize that his superhero life was always going to prevent Pepper from living a normal life. He did love and trust her enough at one point to make her the CEO of Stark Industries, something that happened in the films as well. The Starks in the movies, though, are couple goals for real. With a ship name like Pepperoni, that is a setup for success. They started out professional the same way they did in the comics, with Pepper as Tony's secretary, but the chemistry is hard to ignore. Eventually, they end up married with a little girl living in a beautiful house on the lake. Eagle-eyed fans notice that the blue on Pepper's rescue armor featured in the iconic Endgame battle is a very similar blue to the dress she wore to the Stark Industries charity event in the first film, where Tony arguably fell in love with her. He is just a romantic at heart. He often puts Pepper's well-being above his own. In Iron Man 3, a missile hits Tony's mansion, and instead of calling an Iron Man armor to himself, he calls it to save Pepper. At the end of the movie, he destroys 33 suits in a romantic fireworks show to show Pepper that he wants to prioritize their relationship. This next couple is as incredible as they come. I'm talking about Bob and Helen Parr, Mr. and Mrs. Incredible themselves. Their super wedding was also a massive hit in their hero world, and they went on to have 3 sweet and super kids. Mr. and Mrs. Incredible have been through it together. They dealt with heroes being all but banned from being in the public, and then needing to raise 3 power unstable super toddlers. Yes, Bob wasn't always 100% honest with Helen when he was off retraining to be a superhero, but they talked it out, they worked out their own problems at the same time as saving the city, and Bob just couldn't stand waiting on the sidelines anymore while bad things were happening all over the city. He has to help people. Elastigirl is not to be ignored here either. In her words, leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so. She is not just stretchy, she can beat you up just as easily as her husband can and has a pilot's license. The pair are still married and have the perfect super family with no plans of that changing. Hawkman and Hot Girl aren't just an iconic couple in our time, but throughout time. Way back before any of us were around, Hawkman was once the general of the Deathbringers. I think you probably know what they bring, but to expand, the Deathbringers' job was to gather human sacrifices for the Lord Beyond the Void, a bad guy. After each battle, Hawkman would see Hawk Girl, an angel at this point. Technically, she wasn't supposed to reveal herself to him, she just saw good in him and wanted to reach out. Eventually, Hawkman was held responsible for his actions and agreed to be reincarnated until he has saved as many lives as he took, with Hawk Girl being reincarnated beside him for her attachment to him. With each reincarnation, they found each other and fell in love over and over and over again. Adorable! Eventually, Hawkman does save the correct amount of people and the pair face God. He offers a choice. Either the pair be separated in heaven or return to Earth together one last time and live out one final life and meet oblivion at the end. You probably know which one they picked, but just in case they chose one more life together, I literally cried. Couldn't bring this list into existence without Clark Kent and Lois Lane. The pair debuted together in 1938 and have been going strong ever since. There was this whole thing once where Clark forgot he was Superman, and while being just Clark, he married Lois. Then, when she managed to get the Superman side back, he wanted to marry her all over again as Superman. How cute is that? The two ended up having a super kid who later helped found the Super Sons with Batman's son. The foundation for their relationship is strong, they both share similar morals, and Clark has gotta be one of the most righteous and loyal men out there, with her being the same as well as smart and sweet. It's picture perfect. The sweetest and funniest moment between this pair would have to be in the 1930s Detective Comics. Clark Kent goes to ask her out, but oh no, she has eyes for another, and and it's Superman. Girl, she even said Clark sickens her. When I tell y'all I laughed about this for 5 minutes, I mean that. Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson have been the primary Spider-Man couple for most of Spidey's run. His love for her has inspired Spidey to continue fighting for his life on multiple occasions. One time in Spider-Man 98, Peter got stuck under the Daily Bugle and MJ's love helped inspire him to lift and stabilize the building. Another time in Craven's Last Hunt series, he was buried alive for 2 weeks and almost gave up, but the thought of never seeing MJ again was worse than death and he clawed his way to the surface. He died for her, but he also continues choosing to live for her. Even the ever-grouchy J. Jonah Jameson cried at their wedding. Speaking of their marriage, their love was so great that once the devil offered to save Peter's Aunt May in exchange for their love, their marriage. He could have asked for anything and he picked that. The movies have also shown off how cute their love is. There are so many cute moments across the films, but the most iconic would have to be the upside down kiss. There is a reason I put these two at number 1. Peter and MJ's love is so strong that every actor that has played Spider-Man in a movie has ended up dating their MJ counterpart. The most recent being Tom Holland and Zendaya, the cutest couple in Hollywood.
In the number 10 spot, we have Black Panther and Storm. X-Men Storm and the Avengers Black Panther started off a romance that dates back to their stories in the 80s. Then eventually they got married in 2006, seeming to be the perfect match for each other. However, the X-Men and Avengers were pitted against each other in 2012, and the couple ended up divorcing in a rather cold and pretty unemotional way. This was speculated to be in response to fan outcries that Marvel just thrust 2 high-profile black heroes together without much prior chemistry. However, other fans were devastated that this iconic duo was wrenched apart for the sake of drama. Coming in at number 9 is Black Cat and Spider-Man. Everyone automatically thinks of Mary Jane as Spider-Man's true love, but in the world of superheroes, he was no better match than he was with Black Cat. She was willing to give up her criminal ways for him, patrol the streets with him. She was even going to selflessly break up with him to save him from being jinxed when she made a deal with Kingpin. But one problem persisted that doomed that relationship. She was much more in love with Spider-Man than she was with Peter Parker. Next up at number 8, we have Black Canary and Green Arrow. There are apparently a lot of black animals that superheroes like to name themselves after. Black Canary and Green Arrow both met in the 60s right before they joined the Justice League, and with that commenced a love affair that started off pretty rocky with lots of initial squabbles, but finally hit its peak with their 2007 wedding. Both of them are equal but opposite counterparts, not just in costume but outside as well, which allowed them to have such a long-lasting, but of course not forever, relationship, and even open up a flower shop together at one point. How cute is that? In the number 7 spot, we have Scarlet Witch and Vision. Both of these heroes joined the Avengers with a bunch of baggage, which is probably why they found great comfort in being together. This was an unlikely pairing that took fans by shock, but it ended up being a pretty sweet surprise. The two even became proud parents to twins. Vision lacked the necessary parts for that job, but it doesn't matter when your wife can use her magic to create babies. Coming in at number 6 is Superman and Wonder Woman. On paper, these two are the super couple of superheroes. It didn't exactly work out for very long. The pairing fell apart in the New 52. Kind of hard to have a relationship when one half of the pair ends up dying. While they were together though, they were the epitome of what a superhero couple should be. Powerful, together in their isolation from other living creatures, and down to earth despite the obvious otherworldly traits. That's not to say that everyone was totally thrilled with this pairing. Next up at number 5, we have Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. One of Marvel's newer pairings and also one of their most stable. What really draws people to Luke and Jessica's relationship is how super normal it feels. Whether they're heading out to kick crime's butt or interviewing nannies for their kid, the relationship maintains a light and humorous tone, which is a refreshing change from the usual superhero pairing that's doomed to go down the drain. Up next at number 4 is Nightwing and Oracle. This relationship started way back when Nightwing was still Robin and Oracle was still Batgirl. Actually, one of the several reasons why so many people were disappointed when Batman had a relationship with Batgirl in The Killing Joke. It was basically before and after the whole Starfire relationship. As kids, they crushed on each other pretty big time, and it grew into a full-fledged romance with a marriage proposal included. One that was never followed through, of course. Why am I not surprised? In the number 3 spot, we have North Star and Kyle Janadu. So Kyle isn't technically a superhero, and he kind of violates the rule of this list, but this pairing is far too iconic to leave out. Though not the most well-known characters of the X-Men storyline, the wedding in Astonishing X-Men 51 between North Star and Kyle was the very first gay wedding celebrated in any of the major comic books. This was big to begin with, and even bigger when you realize that they're probably the only couple on this list that are still together. Coming in at number 2 is Gambit and Rogue. Easily one of the most favorite pairings from the X-Men. What makes this coupling so intriguing is that it has to happen at arm's length most of the time, leaving the two to grow an attraction with minimal minimal physicality. If Gambit even so much as touches Rogue's skin, he runs the risk of losing his powers or even his life. So when the two are able to physically connect without ill side effects, the chemistry is explosive. And finally, in the #1 spot is Batman and Catwoman. Batman is no stranger to the ladies, but perhaps his most fiery relationship, as well as one of the most fun ones in the comic book world, was with Selina Kyle's Catwoman. It is a constant game of him trying to reform her and her trying to get him to try on the wild side for a change. The relationship has never been completely explicit either. It's drawn out and teasing, creating a long-lasting tension that keeps fans on edge.
And at number 10, Harley Quinn and Nightwing. Let's begin our list with a pairing that is the literal definition of a hookup: Harley Quinn and Nightwing. This unlikely pairing tickled each other's fancies in the Batman and Harley Quinn animated movie. Nightwing tails Harley from her undercover job, and she manages to knock him out. Next thing he knows, he's tied up to a bed, and things get steamy. With Harley seducing him, Nightwing getting real hot under the collar, and Harley teasing him about thinking that he wasn't into girls. Little dig at his golden age history with Batman. She also takes a dig at him for his 90s hairstyles. Then the lights turn off, Harley gets on top of him, and then we cut to later, which Batman interrupts the aftermath. Needless to say, it is definitely a scene you want to check out. In at number 9, Jean Grey and Pyro. Sort of. In a fantasy reality, we think. So Pyro hasn't really been in the Marvel Universe for some time now, but with the Dawn of X relaunch, Pyro has made a comeback in Marauders, in which he has a fantasy of sorts. Now in this fantasy, people are praising him, fawning over him, he's the best thing ever, and Jean Grey hits on him while she lies on the hood of a really sexy car. Sure, he is obviously imagining this, and as of this recording, the issue that this sequence is in actually hasn't come out yet. It comes out on March 4th. So if you're watching this and you've read the issue, let us know in those comments below if the fantasy Pyro and Jean Grey actually get it on. And at number 8, Ramone, Watts and America Chavez. During the Fresh Start relaunch, the most recent iteration of the West Coast Avengers had America Chavez and Ramone Watts on the team, alongside Kate Bishop, Johnny Fuse Watts, Gwenpool, and Kid Omega. Now the team tried to get financed by starring in a reality show that followed their exploits, so we got some pretty intimate on-camera interview moments with them. Ramone, aka Alloy, started dating America before her powers became apparent, and when the couple were captured and put in harm's way, Ramone's mutant ability came to light. She's been permanently merged to vibranium, coating her body in an impenetrable vibranium suit that she can manipulate and control, similar to how the Venom symbiote can extend and form weapons. Anyway, these two were a totally adorable couple in a series that had some really wonderful, hilarious moments, and we miss it. Get to see them on dates, being real cute and stuff, and yeah, it's a good time. Next, at number 7, Mystique and Destiny. I feel like I'm really leaning into the gay on this list. It's a good thing. While Mystique and Destiny's relationship is nothing new, recent news out of X-Men issue 6 gave us confirmation on something that fans have long suspected. Spoilers for this number, by the way, since that issue is pretty brand spanking new as of the time of this recording. While the relationship between Mystique and Irene Adler has long been brushed over, the issue confirms that the two were in fact married. In the current X-Men story arc, Xavier and Magneto continue to hold Irene's resurrection over Mystique's head, using her one true love as a way to bribe her allegiance to them. And in the issue, Mystique, pissed off at them, rightfully so, flat out shouts, "I want my wife back." Now it's the first time we've ever heard their marriage be acknowledged. At the time of their relationship's inception, Chris Claremont had to fight against Marvel editors and the still somewhat prevalent Comics Code Authority about having an LGBTQ romance depicted. We hadn't even seen the two kiss until 2019's History of the Marvel Universe issue 2. Irene died in Uncanny X-Men issue 255, knowing what was going to happen but wanted to save Raven, meaning at some point these two were married off-panel at some point prior to that. Moving on to number 6, Peter Parker and MJ in the MCU. Next up we have a couple from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, one that comic book fans have long been familiar with, except the MCU version is quite different than the Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson that we know from the comics. Now in the recent Spider-Man Far From Home film, the second in Spidey's series from Disney and Marvel Studios, one of the many outcomes of the movie's conclusion includes Peter and MJ, which stands for Michelle Jones in this universe, admitting their mutual feelings for one another. It's adorable. And the big post-credit sequence involves them going on a really cute date where Peter swings with her through the New York City skyline, all before his identity is then cruelly revealed by J. Jonah Jameson, that is. Regardless, we're excited to finally have a couple in the MCU that we actually want to root for. Sorry, you all know that Bruce and Natasha were never gonna work. It was way too forced. And at number 5, Joker and Punchline. Okay, sure, our title is the newest superhero hookups, but let's make an exception for a very popular supervillain. One who has been single for quite a little while now, while his ex has been making leaps and bounds. We're talking about the Joker and his new beau, Punchline. Punchline is very different than Harley Quinn. She's cold, calculated, quite silent, and also a total sadist. The Joker considers her the funniest person that he's ever met in his life. Now, the character made a cameo in Batman issue 89, but made her full appearance in Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen issue 3. While she's barely been in the DC universe, her popularity amongst fans has skyrocketed, with sales, that is. Speaking of the Joker though, let's talk about what his ex has been up to with our next number. And at 4, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. While the Joker is busy declaring war with Punchline at his side, Harley Quinn has been actively working towards turning a new leaf. And also a greener leaf, because, you know, Poison Ivy, green in nature. Ivy and Harley were only relatively recently confirmed to be an actual couple after years of speculation, which root back all the way to their appearances on Batman the Animated Series together. They've flirted a whole lot. They've kissed quite a few times, and even found themselves as a pair in other alternate universes in the DC multiverse. But on DC's Twitter in 2015, it was confirmed that they were actually a couple. Between then and now, we've seen them romantically entangled, we've seen them break up, and we've seen everything in between, becoming one of the most liked couples in the DC universe in recent years. Unfortunately, it seems like DC is kind of squashing the couple once more. Heads up for spoilers for Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy issue 6 up ahead. Without giving too much away, Ivy says goodbye to Harley with a kiss on the forehead, which many fans felt was a major letdown and devalued the relationship, because she's essentially gonna go off and maybe die, so, But here's hoping that they always just kind of find a way back together. I wasn't kidding when I said heavy on the gay. Moving on to number 3, Black Widow and Winter Soldier. Like Mystique and Irene Adler, this is a couple that has been a thing for a long time. But back at the end of last year, we got to see this old flame reunite. Natasha Romanoff and Bucky Barnes, Black Widow and Winter Soldier. Now, the two first sparked a relationship after Bucky was placed in cryosleep, found by the Soviets after his presumed death during World War II. He would train Natasha as a young assassin in the 1950s in the Red Room, and when the two started a romantic relationship, it was discovered and Bucky was put back in cryosleep and her training intensified. Now he's shown up in Web of Black Widow issue 2 after Nat has been reborn as a clone of herself with all of her memories after being killed during Secret Empire. And while the two don't hook up during their encounter, we do get a pretty sexy flashback of their more intimate moments from the past. Both of them in underwear. And at number 2, Nico Minoru and Carolina Dean. After 13 years of shippers wanting this pair to happen, runaway characters Carolina and Nico are finally a thing. It's been a long time in the making, with Carolina having harbored feelings for Nico after being rejected. We actually get a flashback scene of it in Runaways issue 12, which came out in 2018. And it is like significantly less harsh than what actually happened in the initial encounter that this, rejection occurred. The issue itself has Nico accompanying Carolina to a ball for her parents' charity that she's forced to attend, now that she's 18 and a member of the board. Carolina tells her how much having her there has made it easier for her to make it through the night, and then Nico admits that she was confused in the past and that she didn't know herself as she does now, asking Carolina to give her another chance. And she does. The two kiss and our hearts melt. Much of the new 2017 Runaways series has been aimed at fixing mistakes of the narrative's past, one of which many felt was Nico and Carolina not getting together. And finally, in at number 1, it's the X-Men throuple, people, Scott, Jean, and Wolverine. One of the questions many fans had after the first X-Men issue after Dawn of X was what was up with Logan, Jean, and Scott's bedrooms that all shared doors and were connected. They also seemed pretty chummy. So of course there arose speculations of the three of them being more of a throuple than Wolverine and Cyclops constantly duking out over Jean's affections. Spoilers for the recent X-Men issue 7, by the way. While things were hinted to some sort of open relationship defying the monogamy that we've seen from these three in the past, this recent issue depicts Wolverine and Scott sharing a moment in the middle of the night that contains some pretty intimate details. Scott comments about how Logan's body hair makes it too hot for him to sleep, teasing him. Scott invites Logan to an outing with Jean and the kids that they're training, with Logan saying, "Jeannie in a bikini," to which Scott replies, "Scott in a Speedo." Wolverine's response? Well, who could say no to that? While we've yet to see the throuple action actually play out, there's a lot of subtext going on, and a lot of fans hope it becomes a reality.
Number 10, Venom and Eddie Brock. I figured I would throw you a bromance of sorts too on this list, with Eddie Brock and his relationship with his symbiotic friend Venom. Though really the two of them together are truly Venom. true love. The thing that really makes these two pretty nuts together isn't even that one of them is technically an alien entity. It is the codependency. When we look at relationships objectively, you want to have a certain sense of self. There should be you, your partner's self, and the relationship. In a sense, all sort of separate entities. With symbiosis, we don't get this. Heck, the two entities have even admitted their need and love of one another to feel that they are complete. And they have basically had 2 children together. And if you think Eddie has no part in the reproduction of a symbiote, check out Venom issues 164 and 165. The symbiote needs Eddie and his sweet love chemicals to live, and Eddie is pretty much straight up addicted to Venom, believing that Venom makes him a better person. While I know the two have been villainous together in the past, ultimately Venom is at this point an anti-hero, with even his newest film introducing him as such, an unconventional violent hero that just loves tater tots and chocolate. While my partner and I also love tater tots and chocolate, we do not need one another to literally survive. So, seems like a bad idea. Codependency is just not a good way to go in a relationship. Number 9. Black Widow and the Hulk. For some reason the MCU felt like this was a good relationship to establish, giving Natasha the kind of soothing effect on Bruce that his cousin Jennifer Walters in the comics is sometimes able to have, with Natasha and Bruce having a similar connection comparable to Jen and Bruce's connection. I mean, it's not like Natasha and Bruce are incestuous in any means, as they're not related, but the implications that come out of the similarity of these relationships are problematic. People had also dubbed the pairing Hulk-Tasha, mashing up Bruce's superhero persona of the Green Giant with just straight up plain Natasha, is so wrong on so many levels in terms of what you are then led to imagine and picture. I'm not going to get explicit here, but you know what I mean. This relationship also seemingly came out of nowhere. It is not based on any comic book lore. As such, the MCU has to justify it a bit, leading us to this scene between Bruce and Natasha talking about how they feel like they are both monsters. The most problematic thing is that being a monster in this scene equals not being able to have kids, highlighting not the fact that Natasha is a monster because she's an assassin, but because she is sterile. This whole scene is just really odd. This whole relationship is really odd. Like, they sell it well, but I don't know if we ever really needed it. Number 8. Mystique and Professor X. These two are presented in the X-Men prequel films as having a father-daughter relationship, which is hugely problematic if you are familiar with these two in the comics. Professor X and Mystique have often been presented as foes, and even sometimes allies or childhood friends in the comics. Mystique's origins actually are widely mysterious. We know a lot about her, but we don't know exactly how old she is, or even all the things that she has done. We do know, however, that she was married to Professor X. Yeah, that's right. And while under the guise of Moira McTaggart, had his son. I would be almost willing to accept this random happenstance of romance had it actually been explained in the comics. But it's really not. It's offhandedly referenced in Uncanny X-Men and Battle of Atom, where we meet Charles Xavier II, their son. But that's it. If you don't believe me that these two took it too far, just think about the name of their son. Like, Charles Xavier II? Really? So unimaginative. Why even have them hook up? What's the point? Mystique has had many relationships over the years, including a strange one with Sabretooth, but one of my actual favorites has been her long-time relationship with fellow mutant Destiny, who has the power to see future possibilities. The more nearer the possibility, the better her sight. I love them together. I wish they could have taken it further. Number 7. Silk Spectre and Dr. Manhattan. Aw, but it's such a sweet relationship. It really isn't. In the comics, Silk Spectre is just a teenager when she pursues a relationship with Dr. Manhattan. She's 16! And Dr. Manhattan at the time is a grown man in his 30s, and beyond that he's kind of a god. And this all happens much to the displeasure of Laurie's mother. The film adaptation simply had Carla Gugino, the actress who plays her, look a touch younger using some makeup, making their initial attraction feel less creepy than it is. Beyond the fact that Silk Spectre is a teenager, the two end up together for 20 years, while Dr. Manhattan continues to grow ever distant. The fact that they stayed together for that long blows my mind. Manhattan was already very disconnected from humanity when he met Laurie. I can't imagine what maintaining a relationship for that long with one another was like for either of them. Like, just let it go. Number 6. Iron Man and Black Widow. Wow. Where to start with these two? They're kind of a big deal in the Ultimate Universe. The two hook up to the disapproval of Tony's butler Jarvis, and rightly so. But we'll get to the why in a moment. A highlight from them taking things too far is the fact that they made a sex tape, and that it also got released, and that it was also in circulation after Tony was betrayed by Natasha, who was apparently using him this entire time to get her hands on tech, double-crossing not just Tony but the entirety of the USA, when she revealed that she was actually still working as a Russian spy. She even shocks Tony, who seems amazed, but she just laughs it off, mocking him for not suspecting the Russian spy to double-cross him. Obviously he wouldn't suspect that, you weren't a Russian spy at the time, he thought. And Jarvis was right not to trust her, not just because of this betrayal, but because this betrayal also led to his death. That's right, Natasha kills Jarvis. Cruel. Ultimate universe, yeesh. Number 5. Supergirl and Comet. The stories we used to tell in comics. Remember that time that Supergirl dated her horse? Yeah. Supergirl used to travel around with her horse Comet, who used to be a centaur until he wanted to become a man and asked Circe for help, but Circe gave him a potion that transformed him into a horse instead. He followed Supergirl back to Earth one day in horse form and communicated with her telepathically while accompanying her on missions as her super horse. Anyways, he ended up meeting a wizard who was able to grant him the power to transform back into a man whenever a comet passed over his head. I know, it's really oddly specific. Comet had always loved Supergirl, and so once he had transformed into a man, he used his form as an opportunity to get closer to her. The thing that really makes this couple weird and too much is that Comet decided to withhold that he was actually Supergirl's horse, fearing that she would reject him. Instead, he just smirks about it whenever he kisses her. Tee-hee, so funny. Oh my goodness. Number 4. Arisia Rabb and Hal Jordan. Arisia was a young girl when she first met Hal Jordan. She inherited her spot on the Green Lanterns Corps through her family, being the 5th person from the family to join the Green Lanterns. She initially meets Hal and develops a bit of a crush, with Hal seeing Arisia like his little kid sister. Everything from there got really weird with her and Hal, when she was reassigned with some fellow Green Lanterns to Earth and started crushing super hard on him. She subconsciously uses her power ring to alter her age and claims that she now not only looks like a grown woman, but has the mind of a grown woman as well. How can this be wrong, this love I feel for you? This somehow changes everything, and although Hal originally has some hang-ups about starting a relationship with Arisia, because she's really still kind of a young woman, he ultimately gives in to his desire for her. Well, it seems like the writers decided after introducing Arisia they just wanted her to be an older character, an older Green Lantern. Instead of just writing her out and writing in an actual older character to play his love interest, they made this relationship super weird. One of the most disturbing things is that it is also implied that the pair do have sex, and none of the other Green Lanterns seem to see anything wrong with their relationship. Some of them actually encourage it to the point that it's creepy, like when Guy spikes everyone's drinks at New Year's. Why? Number 3. Antman and the Wasp. The comic version of these two are far less sweet than their MCU counterparts. Why this relationship went really as far as it did is beyond me. The two fell in love while on a mission to avenge Janet's father's death, but the two were really not meant to be. They had a strange relationship in the beginning, with Janet almost being presented as younger than she was. This was not helped by the fact that Hank always seemed to be mentoring her, helping her to develop as a hero, and kind of babying her sometimes, or looking after her, making the relationship seem like it was just weird and doomed from the beginning. It all went sideways when Hank's mental health started to deteriorate. He had never felt confident enough to propose to Janet, believing he wasn't worthy of her. But after a few mental breaks, he had adopted the alternate personality of Yellow Jacket, a strong-willed and almost manic persona. He broke into the Avengers mansion and kidnapped Janet and then proposed to her. To the surprise of all of the Avengers, but maybe not the readers, she said yes, having been waiting forever for him to pop the question. You know your wedding is a bad idea when it shocks the rest of your teammates, especially if your teammates are the Avengers. The two were married, and although Janet felt remorse for taking advantage of Hank while he was mentally unstable, she ultimately decided that it was fine. This of course led to Hank continuing to get even more manic, and resulted in him being not just a bad hero, but a bad husband and partner when he slapped Janet after she expressed concern about one of his devious plots, knocking her to the ground. The two divorced, but years later, the two seemed to have resumed being romantically involved. What? Though at least Janet was smart enough to refuse his next marriage proposal. Good on ya. Number 2. Batman and Talia. Granted, Talia isn't so much a superhero, but she does often help Batman out. The two are originally pitched as star-crossed lovers in the comics from two different worlds. Batman is a vigilante and a hero, and Talia is the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, leader of the League of Assassins. The part where this relationship goes too far is where somewhere down the line, DC decided to establish that the son that Talia and Batman have together is a product of rape. In the 1987 version of this story, Talia and Batman are practically married in Bruce's mind, and for all intents and purposes in love, while for a time, Ra's and Batman work together towards a common goal. During this time, Talia becomes pregnant but claims that she miscarried, though it is later revealed that she ended up having the baby. When the story of Batman and Son was retold in 2006, DC decided to change the details. In this retelling, Batman was drugged by Talia and raped, which is how Damian came to be. What's worse is the animated retelling of this story, where Batman isn't even mad about this revelation, and Talia seems to reminisce about the time she raped him, like creepily fondly. Why? Number 1. Hulk and She-Hulk. If you've watched some of our She-Hulk videos, you may have already heard me talk about this relationship that just really should have never happened. And if you haven't, you might be stunned that this even happened. There are a couple instances in the comics where this was maybe hinted at being a thing, but the most disturbing one is the Old Man Logan storyline, where Bruce and Jen apparently hook up in a post-apocalyptic future and have a whole brood of kids together. So, you know this happened more than once. It's also never really specified as to whether or not this was consensual, so that is also a huge issue when it comes to this awful incestuous relationship. Just try to close your eyes and just imagine that it never... Nope. Not working, making me imagine it more. Ick.
Starting us off in at number 10, Spider-Man and Silk. Silk, aka Cindy Moon, first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3 Issue 1. Now, she's a character who had been bitten by the same radioactive spiders Peter had. What are the odds? But unlike Spidey, she had been locked away in a bunker for years in an attempt to hide her from Moreland, who was going around killing those with spider powers. Anywho, the two met when Cindy became free and had immediate intense chemistry. Turns out that thanks to the pheromones running through their bodies due to their spider bites, the two found each other irresistible, which made it incredibly hard for them to work together. Essentially, they were like horny little rabbits, or spiders in this case, who wanted to jump each other's bones every time they were close to one another. So they just had to go their separate ways. Moving on to number 9, Donna Troy and Terry Long. The relationship between Donna Troy and Terry Long is perhaps one of the weirdest ones on our list. Donna Troy was a member of the initial incarnation of the Teen Titans team, and when the new Teen Titans series came out in the 80s, she would return, but older now, in her 20s. As the series progressed, Donna would fall for a fellow named Terry, a much older professor who wasn't overly well received by fans. He also looked a little bit like a dollar store Bob Ross, if we are being honest. Anywho, she would go on to marry Terry in the Tales of the Teen Titans issue 50. Let's flash forward to the Titans Hunt storyline, in which a group of Titans from the future come back to the past with the intention of killing a very pregnant Donna as a means of preventing her son from being born and ultimately becoming a villain named Lord Chaos. Donna eventually gives up her powers, allowing her son to be human, and gives birth to him, but it just gets worse for her. Her son Robert dies, her and Terry split up, and then Terry was eventually killed off entirely in a car accident. Yikes. And at number 8, Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre II from Watchmen. When Laurie followed in the footsteps of her mother Sally Jupiter, the first Silk Spectre, she did not expect to fall in love with an omnipotent superhero, but she did. Upon meeting Dr. Manhattan, aka John Osterman, at a Crime Busters meeting, she found herself attracted to the glowing blue Ubermensch, who dumped his long-term girlfriend Janie Slater for Laurie, despite an almost 15-year age difference between the two. Now, her mother did not approve. She likened their relationship to her daughter sleeping with an H-bomb. Ouch. When the Keene Act passed in 1977 in this universe, she was more than happy to retire with Manhattan, who still worked for the government. But over the years, their relationship grew strained, and the two ended up splitting, with Laurie moving in with ex-teammate Dan Dreiberg, the second Night Owl. And those two inevitably became romantically involved during the events of Watchmen. Oh, and Dr. Manhattan went off to Mars and into space to start fostering life. So yeah. Definitely not getting back together. And at 7, Kitty Pryde and StarLord. In 2014, in the all-new X-Men, Kitty Pryde was working for the temporarily relocated 5 original X-Men who were brought into the future as a means to stop Cyclops in the present. It was a whole thing. But for the sake of this list, what matters is that Kitty took those X-Men into space, teaming up with the Guardians of the Galaxy on a rescue mission to save Jean Grey from the Shi'ar Empire. In the process, Kitty and StarLord, Peter Quill, got real flirty and started a long-distance relationship. Kitty ended up then staying in space with Peter, eventually taking on the helm of StarLord herself after he was declared the Emperor of Spartax. The two also got engaged in 2015, but in that same year, she broke off their engagement, and would later return to the X-Men and her relationship with Colossus in the process. Spoiler alert, their on and off again relationship still persists. Moving on to number 6, we have Magneto and Rogue. First off, Magneto is old enough to be Rogue's dad. Second, Rogue and Gambit all the way, people. Magneto and Rogue had a brief romantic encounter back in Uncanny X-Men issue 274 that, luckily, didn't really go anywhere, and felt that it occurred thanks to them being in the pressure cooker that is the Savage Land. Unfortunately, that wasn't the last that we would see of this pairing. Aside from some on and off again flirting between the two, gross, they ended up as a couple in the Age of Apocalypse alternate timeline. Needless to say, that pairing will never likely see the light of day again in the 616. Up next at 5, Harley Quinn and the Joker. Okay, so yes, these two are traditional villains, or rather, the Joker is like the villain of all villains in the DC universe, but this couple makes our list thanks to Harley being very much an anti-hero these days. Now, the relationship between Harley Quinn and the Joker has always been toxic at best. The Joker has abused her in many ways over the years, yet she always remained fiercely loyal and devout to him. In recent years, that's drastically changed though. Prior to the New 52, we began to see a shift, with Harley having fled the relationship and working on rebuilding her independence in stories like Gotham City Sirens. Now, it seems as if Harley has completely removed herself from dating the Joker, aside from some internal conflict over their past relationship. Now, these days she has an on and off again relationship with Poison Ivy, and during her own Black Book series, we got to see Harley date around. Well, kind of, if you consider her flirtatious romps dating. Forget about her and Lobo. That seared into my mind, no thank you. Up next, number 4, Black Widow and Hawkeye. When Natasha was first introduced in Tales of Suspense issue 52 in 1964, the character infiltrated Stark Industries, and then met Hawkeye, who then helped her fight Iron Man. He was depicted as being quite attracted to the Russian spy. Now, at the time, Nat was trying to deflect from the Soviet Union, and she began falling for Hawkeye too, which further weakened her connections to Russia. As you can imagine, the KGB did not dig this. They tracked her down and gunned her down, which inevitably caused Hawkeye to seek out the help of the Avengers. Hawkeye helped her break her psychological conditioning, and the two continued to date while Natasha deflected to working for S.H.I.E.L.D. But later, they would break up, with both of them dating around with other members of the superhero community. And now they're just platonic pals. In at number 3, Vision and Scarlet Witch. Alright guys, we're just gonna come out and say it. Vision and Scarlet Witch together is kind of weird. We're not really sorry. He's a sentient robot and she's dope, minus that one time she went insane, murdered a bunch of people, and then completely changed the fabric of reality for a hot second. Okay, maybe we're a tad biased. We do like Scarlet Witch a lot. So, human woman and synthesized automaton, the latter longing to feel human, and the former longing to not be hated or feared. So naturally, yeah, they fell in love, and they got married, and they had children, which turned out to be merely apparitions created by Wanda's subconscious. Yeah, don't you love when that happens? So all in all, while they might be weird AF, watching the nuances of their relationship was fascinating as hell. And in Tom King's run on Vision, Vision would completely recreate Wanda and their children in android form, and it was super weird, although it was also a fantastic series that explored the trauma within the relationship, so there's that. I guess we love to not like them? Hate's too strong of a word. But hey, maybe WandaVision will change our mind. Up next, number 2, Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. When it comes to Peter Parker, there are two main love interests that always come to mind: Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy. Gwen, though, who was first introduced in Amazing Spider-Man issue 31, would meet Peter when the two were freshmen at Empire State University, with Gwen dating both Harry Osborn and Flash Thompson before Peter stopped being oblivious to the fact that she liked him. When the two did get together and fans fell in love with their love for each other, tragedy would strike, with Gwen being tossed off the George Washington Bridge in 1973 in a story titled The Night Gwen Stacy Died. Peter tried to save her, but she suffered from whiplash, causing her neck to snap and her to die instantly. It was later revealed that she had had an affair with Norman Osborn, and children with Norman Osborn, prior to this, which rocked Peter's world when he found out. But him and MJ are they've always kind of been endgame, if we're being honest. Feel free to argue that in the comments below. We're open to suggestions. And finally, in at number 1, Nightwing and Starfire. Dick Grayson and Coriander almost got married once. They had a big old wedding, and right before the priest announced them man and wife, an evil and possessed version of Raven popped up, literally obliterated the priest, and proceeded to basically make out with Corey under the protection of a force field while Dick helplessly watched. Funny enough, the two have had worse ruts than their wedding day. Dick and Corey got together during the 80s run of the New Teen Titans, and even stirred up some controversy when they were depicted in the panels in bed together. Now, the two have endured a lot. Dick had been sexually assaulted by Mirage, who was posing as Starfire, and the two had gone into a slew of fights, dealt with xenophobia, re their impending human and alien marriage, and eventually, after the wedding went sour, Corey decided she had enough and they needed space. So she literally flew off into space to do that. Plus, Dick has had an on and off again relationship with Barbara Gordon over the years, and many believe that those two are endgame compared to him and Corey. So what do you guys think? Give us a shout in those comments below.
Number 10, Rogue and Sentry. You know I love the Sentry, but when he was retconned into comic lore, not everything that came with this history was great. namely his relationship that apparently happened with Rogue. In Century Fallen Sun, all the supers are gathered at Robert and Lindy's grave. The epitaph on their joint tombstone under their names even reads, "Together forever." Such a sweet sentiment. But in this comic, we learn that apparently Sentry's power made him immune to Rogue's power-absorbing abilities, meaning that she was able to touch him without any fear. She confesses this, bursts into tears, and runs off as everybody is sharing memories that they had with Sentry, leaving Cyclops to pretty much confirm that Rogue and Sentry were intimate. Apparently Rogue had just confessed this to her X-Men family on the way over, but Robert was of course married to Lindy, which means I guess he cheated on his wife with Rogue? Unless this happened before they were married? Anyways, it's a really weird wrench to just throw into Rogue's already challenging sex life. She doesn't have enough problems, jeez. Wonder if Lindy knew and was cool with it. Maybe Lindy was there, who knows? Oh my gosh, now I'm imagining all these things. Number 9. Homelander and Becca Butcher. While Becca might not be a superhero herself, and some would see Homelander as a supervillain, Vought would obviously have us believe otherwise. While Becca's story is a lot darker in the comics, things are still taken too far with her in the television series based off the comics. In the comics and the series, Billy believes that Becca has been raped by Homelander, which ultimately caused her death. It's his motivation for vengeance on the supers. However, in the television series they take it in a different direction. Instead, in the show, Becca was actually having an affair with Homelander and she managed to give birth to the child that they conceived together. Whether she lives or dies, the relationship is definitely taken too far. But in the television series, I would say the relationship is even more shocking as it leaves Becca in a very bizarre position where she also seems still pretty terrified of Homelander even though she had an affair with him. And this also shatters Billy's motivation and it leaves the audience wanting to know more. It's just well written. Just a cool twist. Twisty twist. Number 8. Black Widow and Spider-Man. Okay, so this relationship that I'm talking about is from one panel. But trust me, this one panel is the only one you will need for these two. I'm of course referring to the little one-shot panels in What If Volume 1 issue 34. I love these one-shot little panels of what ifs. Like, what if Dazzler had decided to become a lawyer? Or what if Dr. Doom had a sense of humor? The panel I'm specifically talking about though poses the daydream of what if Spider-Man had married the Black Widow, which apparently would have resulted in cannibalism. Burp. All you really need to say about that. Cannibalism is always too far. When you've gone there, you can't go back, because one of you is probably dead. Number 7. Gambit and Mystique. So while this relationship didn't specifically go anywhere, the attempt in and of itself was so messed up that I actually had to mention it. In the comic series X-Men, Gambit ends up becoming attracted to X-Men student Fox while he's with Rogue. He does his best to avoid Fox and remain loyal, truly wanting to be with Rogue and Rogue only, but still Rogue ends up feeling insecure and getting jealous. I mean, if you couldn't touch your one true love, but everyone else was able to, I'm sure you would feel pretty insecure too. While jealousy is not necessarily abnormal when it comes to any relationship, and nothing happens between Gambit and Fox, it is later revealed that this wasn't even Fox, but was actually Mystique in disguise. That's what takes this too far. Mystique sees Rogue as a daughter, and Rogue sees Mystique as her adoptive mother. And yet, apparently, Mystique claims she was hitting on Gambit for Rogue's own good, trying to prove that he wasn't good enough for Rogue, to protect her daughter. You know, disapproving of your child's partner is one thing, trying to sleep with said partner to prove your point is kind of another. Kinda gross. Don't do that. Number 6. Black Widow and Iron Man. In the Ultimates universe, Black Widow is not a very super person. She ends up being a spy working with the Liberators to betray the Avengers and clear a way for the Liberators' invasion. But even if we don't go into that whole plot point, Tony and Natasha still manage to take it too far. Tony and Natasha start dating, and shortly after, Tony proposes to her. He trusts his new bride a little too much, even gifting her her very own set of Iron Man armor. Even after the betrayal comes up and Black Widow is killed by Hawkeye, we later find out that Tony and Natasha had a sex tape. Yeah, they made a sex tape, which ends up getting circulated after Natasha's death. For this relationship being taken too far, I really blame the Ultimates universe. But to be honest, Ultimates often takes everything a little too far. It's what we both love and hate about it. Number 5. Gambit and Belladonna. This star-crossed love story ends very badly for one of these two, but in all it's pretty much tragic all around. Before Gambit fell in love with Rogue, he had a childhood sweetheart, Belladonna Boudreaux. The two became friends when they were little, not knowing that they came from rival guilds, the Thieves Guild and the Assassins Guild. Over the year, the rivalry became ever more violent, and as such their fathers arranged a marriage between the two, which they hoped would help to bring both guilds together in harmony. However, However, soon after they were married, Bella's brother challenged Remy to a duel. I think you can see where we're going here. The Romeo and Juliet mirrored story of their love ended up leaving Remy banished and Bella mistaken for dead, though we later found out that she was just in a coma. Things only got worse for Bella from there. She was revived, but Rogue accidentally touched her, which caused Bella to lose all of her memories. This caused Gambit to leave her, and he would end up leaving Bella more than once. Ouch. Guess Belladonna was no Rogue for him, sadly. Number 4. Lady Shiva and David Kane. This relationship went too far right from the beginning. Before Lady Shiva was Lady Shiva, she was Sandra Wusan, a practiced martial artist who performed and trained with her sister Carolyn. David Kane, member of the League of Assassins, came to watch them perform one time and felt that Carolyn was holding Sandra back. Believing Sandra to be his true soulmate, he kindly killed Carolyn for her. This obviously upset Sandra dramatically, who swore vengeance for her sister's death. She tracked Kane down, but was ambushed by the League of Assassins. She was defeated, and it was then that she realized just how much her sister had held her back. Kane offered to spare her life if she would agree to bear his child and leave the baby for him to raise. And Sandra agreed. Pretty weird. She trained with the League and set out an hour after her baby was born. Only within the League of Assassins could this weird story be conceived. But hey, we got Cassandra Cain out of it, so Number 3. Aviax and a Dinosaur. Sounds so ridiculous just even reading that. The comic series The Wanderers saw this really odd pairing happen. The Wanderers are a cosmic superhero team who were created to be a group of allies to the superhero team the Legion of Superheroes. They are tasked with helping to save a species on a prehistoric planet filled with dinosaurs where everything is going extinct. To ensure the diversity of the species on the planet despite mass extinction and protect the life there, Aviax, who is a shapeshifter, comes up with the brilliant idea to mate with a bird-like dinosaur, passing on his genes, which are immune to the radioactive fog that appears to be attacking the planet. Most of the team are on board with this brilliant plan, and so Aviax does just that. Sure, he's saving a species, but also they leave before ever confirming that this actually works. It does end up working, of course, and we the readers know that, but as soon as this deed is done, Aviax just runs back to his teammates. The comics even go into the whole mating ritual between Aviax and the dinosaur. No. It's really weird. Number 2. Cable and Copycat. Cable and Domino become a really big deal in the comics. Their relationship echoed that of other famous and adorable mutant couples like Gambit and Rogue or Jean and Scott. The two became quickly inseparable, and this would have been all well and good until the writers decided that this was not actually Domino, but shapeshifter Copycat in her guise. Copycat had actually been tasked with blowing up X-Force's headquarters and killing Cable, but during her time as Domino, she kinda became fond of him, because they had a whole relationship. Deadpool was then sent to confirm that Copycat followed through on her orders. This resulted in Copycat's betrayal being revealed, though she still attempted to protect her teammates. Despite her trying to help, X-Force headquarters was blown up, with both Copycat and X-Force actually getting away. But while physically he was intact, these events shattered Cable's emotional life for a little while. Poor Cable. Number 1. Miss Marvel and Marcus. Sorry friends, we are going there. To the Avengers issue 200, where we shockingly discovered that Miss Marvel was unknowingly pregnant. After the delivery and telling her fellow teammates that she felt used and confused in regards to this newborn baby and how it came about, her son grows rapidly into an adult man. He calls himself Marcus, and this man reveals the story of his origins, telling a story of how he was a Mortis's and an unnamed woman's son. The unnamed woman herself looked a lot like Carol. Creepy. He found himself trapped in limbo after his mother left and his father vanished. So he came up with a plan to escape. He found a woman from Earth who he felt attracted to as she resembled his mother. That's actually in the comics. I'm not kidding. This woman ended up being Carol Danvers herself. He attempted to woo her, but when she resisted his charms, he was forced to use his powers to make her fall in love with him. Obviously. The two had some weird non-consensual space sex where Marcus impregnated Miss Marvel with his essence. He returned Miss Marvel to Earth, where he was then born from her. Not belonging to this realm of existence, things start getting really weird on Earth because of his presence. So he decides that he actually has to return to Limbo, realizing that he does not belong on Earth and that mayhaps he was destined to forever be alone. Conflicted, as her mind is still kinda brainwashed, Carol feels like maybe she should return with Marcus, as she still feels the effects of his influence, and says that she feels even closer to him because he is also now her son. because he's also now her son. The Avengers stand aside and bid Carol adieu, letting her ride off into the sunset with her rapist. Don't worry though, the X-Men do come to her aid after she manages to escape Marcus, and she rightfully gets to chew out the Avengers for willfully abandoning her. The story is so messed up.
Number 10, Batman and Wonder Woman. So this one is at number 10 because, well, this pops up a decent amount and was even part of the DCAU, that being the DC Animated Universe, with Wonder Woman being a pretty aggressive go-getter about it. Most people in that canon remember that episode where Wonder Woman gets turned into a pig, and to change her back, Batman has to sing for Cersei, and he does. It's all very sweet. However, in comics, this has been flirted with as well. It's usually as an Elseworlds thing, but they were also together during the Obsidian Age saga, a post-crisis arc that now no longer counts, like so many things, so many universes reset. This one falls into a Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex argument for some, saying that Batman would be too fragile. I mean, remember when she shoved him in Snyder's Justice League? Another series that was hinting hard at this. When people tend to pair Wonder Woman in the Trinity, it tends to be with Superman, but that will run into a backlash with some of being too obvious, where they felt that Batman and Diana is a more unique dynamic. Which do you prefer and why? Tell me down below. How do you feel about Wonderbat? Yes, I use the ship name. I'm that type of person. You know this by now. Number 9, Nightwing and the Huntress. Here we go, post-crisis. So Helena Wayne has become Helena Bertinelli, and is now a loose cannon who does what it takes to get the job done. She would end up having a relationship, a brief one, with Nightwing during one of his more angsty periods. They would even have a mini-series together where their dynamics would bounce off of each other. Her succeed at all costs, and his Batman training, which more often expressed itself in the need for limits. It was a 4-issue mini. He tries to get her to change her ways and gives her the whole "we're both lonely" speech, which is a bold play, but if you get the person at the right time, can be super effective, and it works here. I mean, this gets them sleeping together, and then Barbara calls and it's super awkward because they were a thing, and he's all, "Shh, you'll wake her up." Like, wait a hint, Dick, you didn't have to say that. She's over there. So this was a kinda sorta love triangle, but not really. It ended up being treated as a bit more of a physical thing, and it would carry over into new timelines, but it's not for most people anyway who people envision either of these characters with. Dick has his ship war with Barbara and Starfire, and there was a big push for Huntress in The Question, largely thanks to the Justice League cartoon, where they were super cute.
Maybe you're not looking in the right direction. You're the League's data guy, the conspiracy buff, right? Wildcat says you're a nut job.
Funny, he says the same thing about you.
He's right.
Number 8, SpiderMan and Mockingbird. So Spider-Man has had many a superpowered or superhero girlfriend, and one of them has been Mockingbird, who was actually married to Hawkeye for a bit. I'm telling you, Hawkeye, secret relationship ninja. Now Spider-Man and Mockingbird was set up as a bit of a mismatch, but was also supposed to be the relationship that was going to help Marvel move past One More Day. One More Day is the infamous storyline that ended Peter and MJ's marriage via demon divorce, and for many, MJ and Peter are endgame. So this was a relationship. She was Spider-Man's super spy girlfriend, who started hooking up with him while Peter was the head of Parker Industries, and had his life in order. However, from the start there were signs, like for example, Bobby didn't find Peter funny, and he quips all the time. Red flags. And then Peter would be reset again. So he would go from "I have a job and things are working out" right back to "he's a menace and he has no job and can't figure anything out, time to crash on her couch and then go find a roommate." Yeah, so she didn't want much to do with this Peter. I can't imagine why. And now has a very looking down on, mean to him, but she secretly still cares dynamic. Or she did. These things shift. Mostly now it's a, "hey, we used to date," and it's super awkward. You know how we could have avoided all of this? By having writers who understand that writing marriage can be interesting and dynamic. You just have to apply more than baseline effort. And I'm gonna rein in my salt, because I'm about to reveal my true form. A little Star Trek joke for you. Number 7, Robin and Spoiler. So this Robin is again Tim Drake. So much Tim on these lists, and for younger fans I know it's like, Tim? So Tim Drake for a time had quite the relationship with Spoiler, Stephanie Brown. This was the persona she took on before her death and subsequent resurrection in War Games, where she was Robin, as her death was met with an immediate and intense backlash, especially because it could be read as largely being Batman's fault, and not for a good reason either. She would later become Batgirl, but while she was Spoiler, she was initially largely a foil for Robin. She was the daughter of the villain Cluemaster, who is largely a knockoff of the Riddler, and her and Robin had a teen pregnancy plot. and it was acclaimed. People really enjoyed these two together and felt it was a fresh and more mature look at a teen romance for the time. However, this would end after the whole Robin shenanigans where she was Robin. But they would still have a bit of a push and pull. We were together. It's too bad. It was a unique dynamic. This was who Tim was with when Jubilee was trying to hit on him, by the way. Fun fact. Number 6, Psylock and Cyclops. So Cyclops has a thing for telepaths and also for cheating apparently. This occurred in the 90s and was when she joined an ex-team that Cyclops was leading and found herself drawn to him, decided to seduce him. He didn't really object too much at first. He loves the psychic mindscape play stuff. So this was still cheaty, cause we're past him abandoning his wife and baby to hang out with Jean, but this followed pretty shortly after and he was now back with Jean. And so to some fans it was like, okay, so did Madeline mean nothing? Did Jean mean nothing? Like these are supposed to be the great loves of his life. And then here comes Psylocke. She would employ some of the same mind play things that Emma would do later on in the new X-Men, which were also super effective. Minus the creepy mindscape therapy pretending to be Jean, there's a lot. He would ultimately stay with Jean though, and then Cable would show up as an adult, so no time for cheating. Number 5, Barbara Gordon and Ted Kord. So this occurred during Birds of Prey, and was set up as a separate romance for Barbara outside of Dick Grayson. Ted Kord was drawn to Barbara because of her intelligence and attitude, and she enjoyed his easygoing but still serious when needed attitude. The two would enter into a tentative relationship, however ultimately would decide that they would rather be friends, / be with other people. This culminated with them leaning in for a kiss and being like, I have something to say, and she says, I'm getting serious about someone else, at the same time as he says, can we just be friends? The two have a good laugh about it and there were no hard feelings. Any lingering potential romantic feelings would be cut short by his murder by Maxwell Lord. And since his resurrection post universe-wide reboots, things have been different. Number 4, Captain America, Falcon, and Lady Thor. Listen, I need to specify, when you have multiples running around at the same time, so you know what I'm talking about. Like some people get really mad when you call Lady Thor, and they're like, she's Thor, and I'm like, yes, but second Thor, and we have adjectives and descriptors for a reason. She's not even Thor anymore. There's just so much happening there. So this happened in all new, all different, and was, well, there was a battle and they're colleagues, and the dialogue after their kiss is really weird. Firstly, everyone is shocked, like they've never seen a kiss before, and then she's all, you certainly taste how I imagined Captain America would taste, and he goes, you taste like a goddess. What do both of those statements mean? Like Squirrel Girl tastes like hazelnuts, that I understand, but what does Captain America taste like? Apple pie? McDonald's? I don't know. And a goddess, so light, energy, and pain? Also, she's not a goddess, maybe more like, you taste like a magic hammer. So yes, this was a thing that happened. They taste how the other expected. Tale as old as time. This ship is called Thundershield, by the way. Sounds like a great band, AC/DC all the way. Thundershield. Number 3, Scarlet Witch and Brother Voodoo, or Dr. Voodoo. Time for a Scarlet Witch pairing that doesn't involve mind control. Hooray! Scarlet Witch has recently had far more emphasis placed on the witch part of her persona, and was even recently retconned to not being a mutant anymore, which I hope gets changed back. Come on, pendulum retcons, where are you when I need you? Well, Brother Voodoo, Jericho Drum, is a powerful sorcerer, and was even the Sorcerer Supreme for a time. These two decide to explore what the potential future could hold together as a couple for a bit, and it was sweet. They both know the struggles the other has gone through, and the danger and power of magic. It's so wholesome. He asks her if she's okay, there's none of the judgment that comes from other people. She's all like, I've never been with anyone who understands both sides of me. And he's all, after their kiss, that was sudden. Good, but sudden. See, that's something cute after a kiss, not you taste how I thought you would taste. Bleh. Wholesome cuteness. More of this, please. I support. Number 2, Kyle Rayner and Donna Troy. Just before we get started, in the new Teen Titans in the 80s, in that canon, for a time, Donna had a husband and a kid, and then the editors decided that that wasn't relatable for teens, so they had her family die in a car crash, so she could go back to going on dates. Because who can ever relate to having a family? More boys. Where the dates at? Anyways, Kyle was one of the boys for her to go on dates with. There would even later on be kind of a love triangle between her, Kyle, and Jason Todd. But that was the same series that would see her calling Jason Todd retarded. Do you get it? This was during Countdown. So in all honesty, all of that salt aside, this was cute. The two went on dates in space, and balanced the duality of their secret identities and wanting a normal life. I mean, Donna was down for that. She married a normal guy. So teammates, hopefully more. That's Kyle talking, not me. They'll bring this up on occasion. It depends how much in favor Kyle is, especially post Hal's resurrection. Sometimes it can be like, Kyle? Who? And number 1. So what could top all of this? The Wasp and Deadpool. You're welcome. That's right, so Deadpool's Secret Wars number 4. This showed Janet sleeping with the hot in quotation marks, mustache Deadpool. This was a thing that happened. Well, chop it up to that melded universe, bizarre, weird, timey-wimey stuff going on. Later, there would be some drama about it, and it would come out that while this was going on, the deed, she was calling him Magnus, which is Magneto's name. So in the comics, it's far more common to hear Magneto called Magnus than Eric. So yeah, remember I told you that she hooked up with Magneto in Secret Wars? And apparently she's been thinking about it since then. Like dang, it's been decades. Well, poor Deadpool, his feelings were hurt. People are just so awful to him. Go back to cable, sweetie, it'll be better. So those were 10 more superhero couples you never knew existed. Part 4. I've got more, you can't break me. Did any of these shock you? Let me know down below and have we missed anyone. I'm Sasha and thanks so much for watching Top 10 Nerd. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.